Captain Jake Morrison stood with his hands behind his back, watching the gray metal walls of the alien ship. The cold air made his breath come out in small clouds. He had been a soldier for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The Zephyrian aliens had captured his patrol ship 3 hours ago, and now they were all prisoners. The alien ship was huge. The walls were smooth and dark, with strange blue lights running along them like veins. The air smelled different, too, like metal and something sharp that made his nose burn. Jake counted his crew members standing in the long line with him, 15 good people all waiting to see what would happen next. Lieutenant Amy Carter stood 2 places ahead of him in the line. She was small, maybe 5 feet 4 inches tall, with short brown hair and bright green eyes. Jake knew she was smart, probably the smartest person on his ship. She had fixed their engines more times than he could count. Amy was quiet most of the time, but when she spoke, people listened. The alien commander walked down the line slowly. Commander Vexistar was 8 feet tall with dark green scales covering his body. His eyes were yellow like a snake's, and when he moved, Jake could hear his claws clicking on the metal floor. The alien wore a black uniform with silver symbols that Jake did not understand. Behind Vextar walked 3 other aliens, all carrying weapons that looked like long silver sticks. They pointed them at the humans and watched every move. Jake knew these weapons could kill a person in seconds. He had seen what they did to his ship's hull. The inspection had been going on for an hour. Each human had to step forward when their turn came. The alien commander asked the same questions over and over. What was their name? What was their job on the ship? How many Earth ships were in this area? Where were Earth's main bases? Jake watched as his communications officer, Lieutenant Ben Parker, stepped forward. Ben was young, maybe 25 years old, with blonde hair and scared blue eyes. His hands were shaking. "State your function on the vessel," Commander Vextar said. His voice came through a small device on his chest that turned his alien words into English. The voice sounded cold and mechanical. "Ben Parker, Communications Officer, serial number 7749 Delta," Ben said. His voice cracked a little. "Where are your main communication stations?" the alien asked. "Ben Parker, Communications Officer, serial number 7749 Delta," Ben repeated. "Commander." Vextar stared at him for a long moment. Then he waved one clawed hand and Ben stepped back into line. The alien looked annoyed, but he moved on to the next person. This was how it went with everyone. The humans gave only their name, job, and serial number. This was what they were trained to do if they were ever captured. Give no information that could help the enemy. Now it was Amy's turn. She stepped forward and stood straight, even though the top of her head barely reached the alien commander's chest. She looked small next to the huge creature, but Jake noticed she was not shaking like some of the others. "State your function on the vessel," Vextar said, looking down at her. "Amy Carter, Chief Engineer, serial number 8821 Charlie," she said in a clear voice. "You repair the human ship systems?" the alien asked. "Amy Carter, Chief Engineer, serial number 8821 Charlie," she repeated. The alien commander leaned closer, to her. Jake could see his yellow eyes getting brighter. "Human female, you will tell me about your ship's engine systems. How fast can your vessels travel? What weapons do you carry?" Amy looked up at him without fear. "Amy Carter, Chief Engineer, serial number 8821 Charlie." Commander Vextar's scales seemed to get darker. Jake had noticed this happened when the aliens got angry. The commander stood up straight and looked around at his soldiers. Then he looked back down at Amy. "Your species is weak," he said, his mechanical voice getting louder. "You hide behind your machines because you have no real strength. Soon all humans will learn to obey us. We are superior in every way." Amy did not say anything. She just kept looking at him with those green eyes. Jake thought he saw something there, but it was not fear. It looked more like she was thinking, like she was studying the alien the same way she studied broken engines. "You will answer my questions," Vextar said, his voice now very loud. "Or you will suffer." "Amy Carter, Chief Engineer, serial number 8821 Charlie," she said again. That was when it happened. Commander Vextar's huge clawed hand shot out fast. hitting Amy in the chest and shoulder. The force of the push sent her flying backward across the smooth metal floor. She hit the wall hard with a sound that made Jake's teeth hurt. Amy slid down the wall and landed on the floor. Her uniform was torn where the alien's claws had caught it. There was blood on her forehead where she had hit the wall. She did not get up right away. "Pathetic human female," Commander Vextar said, looking down at her. "Your species is soft and weak. You break so easily. Soon you will understand that we are your masters now." Jake's hands made fists at his sides. Every muscle in his body wanted to move, wanted to help Amy, wanted to fight the alien. But 20 years of being a soldier held him back. If he attacked now, they would probably kill him, and maybe kill others too. But seeing Amy on the floor, hurt and bleeding, made his heart race with anger. The other humans in line were quiet, but Jake could feel their anger too. Lieutenant Bob Hayes, the weapons officer, had his jaw tight. Sergeant Lisa Martin was staring at the alien commander with hate in her eyes. Even young Ben Parker looked angry now instead of scared. Amy slowly pushed herself up from the floor. She used the wall to help her stand. There was blood running down from the cut on her head, and Jake could see she was hurting. But she stood up straight again and walked back to her place in line. What Jake saw in her eyes now was different from before. It was not fear, and it was not just anger either. It was something cold and dangerous. Amy was thinking again, but this time Jake thought the alien commander should be worried. Commander Vextar looked at Amy as she stood back in line. He seemed pleased with what he had done. "Let this be a lesson to all of you," he said to the group. "We are stronger, smarter, and better than your kind. Resistance is pointless." But Jake noticed something the alien did not see. While Vextar was talking, Amy was looking around the room. Her eyes moved quickly, taking in details. She looked at the blue lights in the walls, the doors, the alien soldiers, and their weapons. She was not just standing there bleeding and hurt. She was learning. Jake had worked with Amy for 3 years. He knew that look. It was the same expression she got when she was figuring out how to fix something complicated. The alien commander thought he had broken her spirit, but Jake could see he was wrong. Amy Carter was not broken. She was planning. Amy Carter wiped the blood from her forehead with the back of her hand. The cut was not deep, but it stung. She stood in the holding area with the other prisoners, listening to the low hum of the alien ship's engines. The sound was different from human ships. It was deeper, like a giant heartbeat. The Zephyrians had put all 15 humans in one room. The walls were the same gray metal as the rest of the ship, but there were no windows. Blue lights in the ceiling gave everything a cold look. There were metal benches along the walls, but most of the crew chose to sit on the floor. Amy sat in a corner, away from the others. She needed to think. While the other prisoners talked quietly about their situation, Amy closed her eyes and remembered everything she had seen during the inspection. Her mind was like a camera that never forgot anything. This had made her good at her job, and now it might save their lives. She remembered the layout of the corridors they had walked through. The main hallway was wide enough for 3 aliens to walk side by side. There were doors every 30 feet, most of them closed. The blue lights in the walls were not just for show. Amy had recognized them as power conduits, carrying energy throughout the ship. During her years at the Earth Defense Academy, Amy had studied every piece of alien technology they had captured. The Zephyrians used quantum power systems, much more advanced than human fusion reactors. But Amy had spent 3 years learning how they worked. She knew their strengths, and more importantly, she knew their weaknesses. Captain Morrison sat down next to her. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine," Amy said. She touched the cut on her head. "It looks worse than it is." Jake looked around to make sure no aliens were watching them. "What do you think they want with us?" Amy had been thinking about this too. "Information, mostly. They want to know about our defenses, our ship locations, our weapons. But I think there's more." "What do you mean?" "Look at this ship," Amy said, keeping her voice low. "It's huge, probably a mile long. But they only need a crew of maybe 50 aliens to run it. Their technology does most of the work. I think they capture humans to study us, to learn how we think and fight. Jake nodded slowly. That makes sense. But what can we do about it? Amy looked at him with those green eyes that seemed brighter now. I have some ideas, but I need to see more of the ship first. 2 hours later, alien guards came to give them food. The meal was gray paste in metal bowls, and it tasted like nothing Amy had ever eaten before. But she was hungry, so she ate it anyway. The aliens watched them eat, but they did not talk to the humans. When the guards left, Amy noticed something important. The door to their holding area did not have a complex lock. It was controlled by a simple electronic panel next to the frame. The Zephyrians were so confident that humans could not understand their technology that they had not bothered with heavy security. This was their first mistake. Amy waited until the ship's lights dimmed for what she guessed was nighttime. Most of her fellow prisoners were trying to sleep on the hard floor. Captain Morrison was awake, sitting with his back against the wall. He saw Amy get up and move toward the door. She knelt down next to the control panel and took a small tool from her belt. All engineers carried basic equipment, and the aliens had not taken these simple items away. They probably did not think a small screwdriver could be dangerous. Amy had been right about the door lock. It was simple, much simpler than human systems. The Zephyrians relied on their advanced computers to do everything, but the basic controls were actually quite basic. In 5 minutes, she had the panel open. The wiring inside was different from human electronics, but the basic ideas were the same. Power went from one place to another through metal paths. Amy had memorized the patterns from captured alien equipment. She found the right wires and carefully connected them in a new way. The door made a soft clicking sound and slid open an inch. Amy held her breath, waiting to see if alarms would sound. Nothing happened. The corridor outside was empty and dark. Amy closed the door again and put the panel back together. Then she went back to her corner and sat down. Captain Morrison came over to her. "What did you just do?" he whispered. "I can open the door now whenever I want," Amy said. "But that's not enough. We need to know more about this ship before we can do anything." "It's too dangerous," Jake said. "If they catch you outside this room, they'll kill you." Amy touched the cut on her forehead. "They might kill us anyway, at least this way we have a chance." She waited another hour until she was sure everyone was asleep. Then she quietly opened the door and slipped out into the corridor. The hallway was lit by those blue power conduits, giving everything a strange glow. Amy could hear the ship's engines humming in the walls around her. She moved carefully, staying close to the walls. Her small size helped her now. She could hide behind things that would not hide a larger person. Amy had always been the smallest person on every ship she served on, and other people sometimes treated her like she was weak because of it. But being small also meant she could go places others could not. Amy found a maintenance shaft about 50 feet from their holding area. The cover was held on by 4 screws, and she had them out in 2 minutes. The shaft was just big enough for her to crawl through, but it would be too small for the tall aliens. Inside the shaft, Amy could see the ship's internal structure. Pipes and cables ran in neat lines along the walls. The blue power conduits were everywhere, carrying energy to different parts of the ship. Amy followed one of the main power lines, crawling through the narrow space. After 20 minutes of crawling, Amy found what she was looking for. The maintenance shaft opened into a large room filled with humming machinery. This was the ship's main engineering section. Computer screens showed information in alien writing, but Amy could understand the basic displays. Power levels, engine, status, life support systems, all the things that kept the ship running. Amy spent an hour in the engineering room, studying everything. She used her photographic memory to record every detail. The location of important systems, the way the computers were connected, the design of the power network, all of it went into her mind like data going into a computer. The most important thing she found was the central computer core. It was a large crystal structure in the middle of the room, surrounded by quantum processors. This was the brain of the ship, controlling everything from weapons to life support. And like everything else on the alien ship, it was not heavily protected. The Zephyrians never imagined that a human could understand their systems well enough to be dangerous. This was their second mistake. Amy made her way back through the maintenance shaft and returned to the holding area. She closed the door behind her and sat down in her corner. Captain Morrison was still awake, watching for her return. "Well?" he whispered. Amy looked at him with a small smile on her face. "I found their engineering section, and I think I know how to turn their own ship against them." "What do you mean?" "The Zephyrians are very advanced, but they make everything too complicated," Amy said. "Their computer systems are connected to everything on the ship. If someone who understands their technology gets access to the central computer, they could cause a lot of problems." Jake stared at her. "Are you saying you want to sabotage their ship?" "I'm saying I want to make them sorry they ever captured us," Amy said. "And I want to make sure that alien commander regrets pushing me around." Amy lay down on the hard floor and closed her eyes. But she did not sleep. Instead, she went over everything she had learned, planning each step of what she would do next. The Zephyrians thought humans were weak and stupid. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Tomorrow, Amy Carter would begin to show them what human intelligence could do when it was angry. Commander Vextar was reading reports about Earth's defenses when the first explosion shook his ship. The floor under his feet vibrated, and he had to grab his desk to keep from falling. Red lights began flashing on the walls of his command room. "What was that?" he demanded, his yellow eyes growing brighter with anger. His tactical officer, a smaller alien with dark blue scales, worked quickly at his control station. "Commander, we are detecting a power surge in Section 7. Something has damaged the main power coupling there." Vextar's claws clicked on his desk as he thought. Section 7 was near the prisoner holding area. "Send a security team to check on the humans immediately." But before the security team could move, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The loud noise echoed off the metal walls, making everyone cover their ears. More red lights flashed, and computer screens started showing warning messages in the Zephyrian language. "Commander," the tactical officer called out, his voice worried now. "We have multiple system failures. Engineering reports problems with power distribution, life support fluctuations, and shield generator malfunctions." Vextar stood up from his chair, his tall frame casting a shadow across the command room. In all his years as a ship commander, he had never seen so many problems happen at once. How is this possible? Run full diagnostics on all systems. Meanwhile, 3 levels below in the engineering section, Amy Carter was working faster than she had ever worked before. She had been in the maintenance shafts for 2 hours, moving from one critical system to another. Her small toolkit, which the aliens had ignored as harmless, was proving to be very dangerous in the right hands. Amy had started with the power coupling in Section 7. Using her knowledge of Zephyrian technology, she had carefully rewired the connections to create an overload. The explosion was small, but effective. It damaged the coupling and sent a power surge through the ship's electrical grid. But that was just the beginning. While the aliens were distracted by the first problem, Amy had moved to the shield generator room. The shields that protected the ship from attack were powered by a complex network of quantum processors. Amy found the main control node and began making changes. She took apart her own damaged communicator and used its parts to build a small device. The device was simple, just a few circuits connected in a specific way. When she attached it to the alien computer system, it began sending false commands to the shield generators. The shields started turning on and off randomly. Each time they cycled, they drew massive amounts of power from the ship's main reactors. This put stress on the entire power grid, causing more systems to malfunction. Amy's photographic memory had recorded every detail of the ship's layout during her first night exploration. She knew exactly where to go next. The life support control center was 2 levels up, accessible through another maintenance shaft. The life support systems kept the air breathable and the temperature comfortable throughout the huge ship. Amy did not want to kill everyone, but she could make things very uncomfortable for the Zephyrians. She found the temperature control system and made some adjustments. Soon, some parts of the ship became very hot while others became very cold. The air circulation system began working, incorrectly creating strange winds in the corridors. The aliens, who were used to precise environmental controls, found their ship becoming an unpleasant place to work. Back in the command room, Commander Vextar was getting more angry by the minute. "How can our advanced systems be failing like this?" he roared at his officers. "Find the cause of these malfunctions immediately." His engineering officer, an alien with bright green scales, was working at multiple computer stations at once. "Commander, the failures seem to be connected. Each system that goes down causes problems in other systems. It is like a chain reaction." "That is impossible," Vextar said. "Our computers are designed to prevent cascade failures. Each system is independent." "Yes, sir, but something is overriding the safety protocols. The failures are not random. They follow a pattern, as if someone who understands our systems is causing them deliberately." Vextar's yellow eyes went wide. The thought that had been growing in his mind suddenly became clear. The humans. Check on the prisoners immediately. But when the security team reached the holding area, they found it empty. The door was closed and locked, but all 15 humans were gone. The electronic lock showed no signs of tampering, but somehow the prisoners had escaped. "Find them," Vextar commanded over the ship's communication system. "Search every room, every corridor." How can primitive humans understand our technology well enough to escape? The answer to his question was crawling through another maintenance shaft at that very moment. Amy had returned to free her fellow prisoners after setting up the cascade of system failures. Captain Morrison and the others were now spread throughout the ship, following Amy's carefully planned instructions. Lieutenant Ben Parker, the young communications officer who had been so scared during the inspection, was now in the ship's communication center. Amy had taught him how to recognize the important equipment, and he was systematically destroying the alien ship's ability to call for help. Sergeant Lisa Martin was in the weapons control room, following Amy's instructions to disable the ship's offensive systems. The weapons that had captured their patrol ship were now useless, their targeting computers corrupted by Lisa's sabotage. Lieutenant Bob Hayes was in the navigation center, making sure the alien ship could not escape or change course. Bob had always been good with maps and directions, and Amy had shown him how to confuse the Zephyrian navigation systems, but Amy herself was working on the most important target of all. She had made her way back to the central computer core, the crystal brain that controlled everything on the ship. This time, she brought more than just her small toolkit. Amy had spent hours building a device from parts salvaged throughout the ship, components from her communicator, circuits from the alien systems she had damaged, and power cells from emergency equipment. The device looked like a mess of wires and metal, but Amy knew exactly what it would do. She attached her homemade device to the central computer core. The crystal structure began to glow brighter, and the quantum processors around it started working faster. Amy's device was feeding the computer false information, making it think that every system on the ship was under attack. The computer's response was to activate every defensive protocol at once. Emergency bulkheads sealed off sections of the ship. Fire suppression systems activated in rooms where there were no fires. The gravity generators began fluctuating, making people feel heavier and then lighter in random patterns. Most importantly, the computer began shutting down systems it thought were compromised. Since Amy's device was telling it that everything was compromised, the computer started shutting down everything. Commander Vextar felt his ship dying around him. The lights were failing, the air was getting stale, and his crew was reporting problems faster than they could fix them. The mighty Zephyrian dreadnought, which had seemed so powerful just hours before, was now helpless. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "I am detecting approaching ships, 3 Earth defense vessels moving fast in our direction." Vextar's heart sank. Somehow the humans had managed to send a distress signal. His ship was disabled and enemy vessels were coming to rescue the prisoners. In the depths of the ship, Amy Carter put the finishing touches on her sabotage. She had one more surprise for the alien commander who had pushed her around. Using the ship's own communication system, she sent a message throughout the vessel. Her voice echoed in every room, speaking in clear English that the aliens' translation devices would convert to their language. "Commander Vextar, this is Lieutenant Amy Carter. You said humans were weak and pathetic. You said we would learn our place. I think you are the one who needs to learn something today. Amy disconnected her device from the computer core and began making her way back to find her crewmates. Behind her, the central computer continued its shutdown sequence, turning the advanced alien warship into a floating piece of metal. The small human female that Vextar had dismissed as harmless had just destroyed his ship using nothing but intelligence, determination, and spare parts. Commander Vextar walked through his dying ship with heavy steps. The corridors that had once been filled with the proud hum of advanced technology were now dark and quiet. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, and the air tasted stale and metallic. His perfect warship was falling apart around him. The cascade failures were getting worse every minute. What had started as small problems were now major disasters. The main reactor was operating at only 30% power. Life support systems were failing section by section. The artificial gravity kept turning on and off, making his crew stumble and fall as they tried to work. Vextar's scales had turned a dark gray color, which happened to Zephyrians when they were deeply ashamed. In 30 years of commanding warships, he had never experienced such complete failure. His crew looked at him with questions in their eyes, but he had no answers to give them. His tactical officer approached him in the main corridor. The smaller alien's blue scales were also gray with shame. Commander, we have managed to locate some of the human prisoners. They are in different parts of the ship, but they are not trying to hide. What do you mean? Vextar asked. They seem to be working on our systems, sir. The security cameras that are still working show them at control stations throughout the ship. They appear to know exactly what they are doing. This was impossible. Vextar had studied human technology before this mission. Earth's starships were primitive compared to Zephyrian vessels. Their computers were slow, their engines were weak, and their weapons were basic. How could such a backward species understand advanced Zephyrian systems? But as Vextar walked through his ship, he saw the proof with his own eyes. In the communications center, he found the young human male who had been so frightened during the inspection. Lieutenant Ben Parker was sitting at the main control station, working calmly with the alien equipment as if he had been trained on it for years. You, Vexitar said, his mechanical translator making his voice sound harsh in the quiet room. How do you understand our technology? Ben looked up at him without the fear that had been in his eyes before. Amy taught us. She explained how your systems work and what we needed to do to stop them. Amy? Lieutenant Carter, the engineer you pushed around during your inspection. She figured out how to turn your own ship against you. Vextar felt something cold in his chest. The small human female he had dismissed as weak and worthless had somehow learned to use Zephyrian technology better than his own crew. He left the communications center and continued through his ship. In the weapons control room, he found Sergeant Lisa Martin working at the targeting computers. The screens showed error messages in the Zephyrian language, but Lisa seemed to understand what they meant. The weapons are completely offline, she told him when she saw him enter. Amy showed us which circuits to disconnect. Your ship cannot hurt anyone now. In the navigation center, Lieutenant Bob Hayes was making adjustments to the course control systems. The ship's ability to move through space had been carefully sabotaged. They were trapped in this location until Earth Defense Force ships arrived. But it was in the main corridor near the engineering section that Vextar finally came face to face with Amy Carter herself. She was walking calmly toward him, carrying a small device made from various ship components. Her uniform was still torn from when he had shoved her, and dried blood still marked her forehead. But there was no fear in her green eyes now. Instead, there was something that made Vextar's scales turn even darker gray. It was confidence, intelligence, and cold determination all mixed together. You, he said, his voice barely more than a whisper through the translator. Hello, Commander, Amy said, stopping a few feet away from him. I told you that you would regret pushing me around. I hope you are starting to understand what I meant. Vextar looked down at her, this small human who barely reached his chest. How did you do this? Your species is primitive. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Amy smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. You made several mistakes, Commander. Your first mistake was thinking that advanced technology makes you automatically superior. Your second mistake was not Learning anything about the people you captured. What do you mean? I spent 3 years studying captured Zephyrian equipment, Amy explained. Your people are very good at building complicated systems, but you make them too complicated. Everything on your ship is connected to everything else. When you understand how the connections work, you can make the whole system collapse. She held up the device she was carrying. This little thing has been talking to your central computer for the last 2 hours. It has been telling your computer that every system on the ship is under attack. Your computer's response was to shut everything down to protect itself. Vextar stared at the simple device made from spare parts. That is impossible. Our computers have safeguards against such attacks. Your safeguards work against other advanced computer systems, Amy said. But they were not designed to handle a simple, crude device that just feeds false information directly into the data stream. Sometimes the old, simple ways work better than the new, complicated ones. The alien commander felt his world changing around him. Everything he had believed about his people's superiority was crumbling like his ship's systems. But how did you learn to do this so quickly? Amy tapped her forehead with one finger. Photographic memory. I remember everything I see. Exactly. As I saw it. During your inspection yesterday, I was not just standing there being intimidated. I was studying your ship, learning its layout, understanding how everything connected together. When you shoved me to the floor, I got angry, but I also got motivated. I decided that you needed to learn what happens when you underestimate humans. Vextar thought about the moment when he had pushed the small human female across his deck. At the time, it had seemed like a simple demonstration of Zephyrian power over inferior beings. Now he understood that single action had begun the destruction of his entire ship. Your third mistake, Amy continued, was assuming that because I am small and soft, I am also weak and stupid. Physical strength is not the only kind of strength, Commander. Intelligence, creativity, and determination can be much more powerful than big muscles and sharp claws. The ship shuddered around them as another system failed. The lights flickered, and they could hear the sound of metal creaking under stress. Amy's sabotage had created a chain reaction that was tearing the vessel apart from the inside. Why? Vextar asked. Why did you not just try to escape? Why destroy the entire ship? Amy's eyes grew harder. Because you and your people started a war with Earth. You attack our ships, capture our people, and treat us like animals. Someone needs to show you that humans are not easy prey. She gestured around at the failing ship systems. This is what happens when you pick a fight with humans, Commander. We do not just defend ourselves. We adapt, we learn, and we find ways to win that you never expected. Vextar heard footsteps in the corridor behind him. His crew was gathering, looking lost and confused as their mighty warship died around them. They looked to him for leadership, but he had no idea what to do. Amy heard the footsteps too, but she did not seem worried. The Earth Defense Force ships will be here soon. I managed to send a distress signal using your own communication array before we disabled it. My captain and crew will be rescued, and you and your people will be our prisoners. How does it feel, Commander, to know that everything you believed about your superiority was wrong? How does it feel to be defeated by someone you thought was weak and worthless? Vextar looked down at Amy Carter, the small human engineer who had destroyed his ship using nothing but intelligence and determination. For the first time in his life, he understood what the word respect really meant. 6 months after the incident on the Zephyrian dreadnought, Amy Carter stood in front of a large window in Earth Defense Force headquarters. Outside, she could see the construction yard where new human starships were being built. These ships looked different from the old ones. They were bigger, faster, and used technology that had been learned from the captured alien vessel. Amy was no longer just a lieutenant. The gold bars on her uniform showed her new rank of commander. On her chest were 3 medals, including the Earth Defense Cross, the highest honor their military could give. But Amy did not think much about the medals. She was more interested in the ships being built outside. Commander Carter, a voice said behind her. Amy turned around to see Admiral Harrison, the head of Earth Defense Forces. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. Behind him walked Captain Jake Morrison, who now had a star on his collar showing his promotion to Commodore. Admiral, Amy said, standing straight in the military way. I have some news that might interest you?" Admiral Harrison said. "We just received a message from the Zephyrian government. They want to discuss peace terms." Amy raised her eyebrows. "Really? What changed their minds?" Jake Morrison smiled. "Word has spread throughout their empire about what happened on Commander Vextar's ship. Other Zephyrian commanders are afraid to attack human vessels now. They call it the Carter incident in their military reports." The Admiral opened a folder and pulled out some papers. "According to our intelligence sources, the Zephyrians have changed their entire approach to fighting humans. They no longer assume we are primitive or easy to defeat. Some of their commanders refuse to take human prisoners because they are afraid of sabotage." Amy felt strange hearing this. She had not thought about her actions becoming famous. She had just wanted to escape and protect her crew. "What about Commander Vextar? What happened to him?" "He is in our custody," the Admiral said. "Interestingly, he's been very helpful. He has provided information about Zephyrian technology and military tactics. He says he wants to prevent more disasters like what happened to his ship." After the meeting, Amy walked through the halls of the headquarters building. On the walls were pictures of famous battles and important people in Earth's military history. She stopped when she saw a new picture that had been added recently. It showed her standing next to the wreckage of the Zephyrian dreadnought. Under the picture was a small sign that read, "Commander Amy Carter, the engineer who changed the war." Amy stared at the picture for a long time. The woman in the photo looked confident and strong, but Amy remembered how scared she had been that day on the alien ship. She had not felt like a hero. She had just been angry and determined not to let the aliens win. "Strange seeing yourself on the wall, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. Amy turned to see Dr. Susan Blake, one of the scientists who worked on alien technology. Dr. Blake was a tall woman with short black hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been one of Amy's teachers at the academy. "It feels weird," Amy admitted. "I was just doing my job." "Your job was to fix engines," Dr. Blake said with a smile. "Destroying an alien warship was something extra." They walked together toward the research section of the building. "I have something to show you," Dr. Blake said. "We have been studying the technology you recovered from the Zephyrian ship. Your sabotage methods have taught us new ways to understand their systems." The research lab was filled with pieces of alien equipment. Scientists and engineers worked at tables covered with strange devices and computer screens showing alien writing. In the center of the room was a large crystal structure that Amy recognized immediately. "Is that the central computer core from Vextar's ship?" Amy asked. "Part of it," Dr. Blake said. "We managed to recover this section before the ship was completely destroyed. The data inside has helped us understand how Zephyrian computer systems work. We are already building countermeasures for our own ships." Amy walked around the crystal, remembering how she had attached her crude device to it. "I was just trying to confuse their computer. I didn't know it would cause so much damage." "That's what made it so effective," Dr. Blake explained. "The Zephyrians designed their systems to handle sophisticated attacks from other advanced civilizations, but your simple, direct approach bypassed all their defenses. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one." They were interrupted by a young ensign who came running into the lab. "Commander Carter, you need to come to the communication center immediately. There's an incoming message addressed specifically to you." Amy followed the ensign to the communication center, wondering who would be calling her directly. When they arrived, the technician on duty looked confused. "Ma'am, the message is coming from a Zephyrian ship," he said. "But it's not a military vessel. It appears to be some kind of transport ship." "Put it on the main screen," Amy said. The large display flickered, and suddenly Amy was looking at a familiar face. Commander Vextar appeared on the screen, but he looked different. His scales were a lighter color and his yellow eyes seemed less harsh than before. "Lieutenant Carter," he said, then corrected himself. "I apologize. I understand you have been promoted to commander." "Hello, Vextar," Amy said. "I didn't expect to hear from you again." "I am calling to inform you of something that you should know," the alien said. "Your actions on my ship have had consequences that reach far beyond our conflict." Amy waited for him to continue. "The story of what you accomplished has spread throughout the Zephyrian Empire," Vextar said. It has become a lesson taught in our military academies. Young Zephyrian officers learn about the day when underestimating an opponent led to the destruction of one of our most powerful warships. The lesson is called The Wisdom of Respect, he continued. It teaches that true strength comes in many forms, and that intelligence and determination can overcome physical advantages. Amy felt surprised. They teach about me in your schools? They teach about the importance of understanding your enemies before you fight them, Vextar said. Many Zephyrian commanders now spend time studying human tactics and technology. We no longer assume that a smaller, softer species is automatically weaker. He paused for a moment, and Amy could see something like sadness in his yellow eyes. I wanted to personally thank you, Commander Carter. Thank me for destroying your ship? For teaching me something important, Vextar said. For 30 years, I believed that being bigger and stronger made me superior to other beings. You showed me that I was wrong. Intelligence, creativity, and the will to survive are more powerful than size or weapons. Amy nodded slowly. I'm glad something good came from what happened. There is something else, Vextar said. I am now working with a group of Zephyrians who believe this war should end. We are trying to convince our government that humans are not primitive creatures to be conquered, but intelligent beings who deserve respect. The peace talks that are beginning soon are happening partly because of what you did on my ship, he continued. Many Zephyrians now fear that attacking Earth will result in more disasters like the one you caused. After the communication ended, Amy walked back to the window overlooking the construction yard. The new ships being built there would be faster and stronger than anything Earth had ever made before. But more importantly, they were being built by people who now knew that humans could compete with any alien technology. The war was not over yet, but Amy could see that things were changing. The Zephyrians no longer saw humans as easy prey. Other alien species had heard the story and were being more careful about starting fights with Earth. Amy thought about the moment when Commander Vexitar had shoved her to the floor of his ship. That single act of cruelty had started a chain of events that changed the course of the entire war. It had shown the galaxy that humans were not weak or primitive, but resourceful and dangerous when threatened. Years later, when peace was finally signed between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire, historians would write books about the Battle of the Dreadnought. They would describe it as the turning point when humanity proved it belonged among the stars. But Amy Carter would always remember it as the day she learned that being small and soft did not mean being weak. Sometimes the greatest victories come, not from strength or weapons, but from intelligence, determination, and the refusal to give up when everything seems impossible. The 5 minutes that changed everything had become legend,